A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Jennifer Kyriakakis. She is the founder and VP of Marketing at MATRIXX Software. Jennifer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you've got some points of passion to share on this topic of how to take on Goliaths when you are the David in the market. I think a lot of our audience, B2B marketers and sales folks out there, find themselves in this sort of situation. So really excited to hear your lessons that you've learned in your career being in these sorts of situations. Before we do that, I would love for you to give our audience a little bit of context as to your background and maybe what you and the team at MATRIXX Software are up to these days.
Sure. My background is in the telecommunications marketplace. So I spent the early part of my career implementing big billing systems because telcos started out as utilities. And what the team at MATRIXX and I really wanted to bring to market was a digital commerce platform for telcos. So telcos have traditionally been a utility, but now they have the opportunity to be actually packaging different kinds of products and services to compete with all of the other tech companies that make money off of their networks, right? So to be packaging things up like a Netflix or an Uber or a Spotify would do to actually help them monetize their networks better and really become digital players instead of utilities.
Nice. And I was looking at your background a little bit before we got a chance to do this interview, Jennifer, and I noticed that, you have a bachelor's degree in information technology. Tell me briefly how that transition happened from going from IT to marketing.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I spent the first part of my career doing big system implementations for telcos. And really built that basis of understanding of what it's like to implement and manage software. And so as I wanted to grow my career in the software industry, I took that and shifted into a technical sales role. So being more on the sales side to get that different commercial perspective of how software companies operate and what it takes to, take a product and make that technical sale to the customer. So after doing that for a number of years, you're in these roles where you are out there in front of the customer every day telling different stories. I got the opportunity to join a solutions marketing team. And I realized that, marketing are the people that write the stories. These are the people that create the stories and figure out what the rest of us are going to say. And that really appealed to me. And I realized, I have just as much fun writing the story as I do telling the story. So that's really where I want to take my career.
Awesome. That is such an interesting journey. You don't hear that a lot from, implementation to sales to marketing. So I think a lot of those have probably informed the way that you approach marketing. And I think that leads itself to a very unique perspective. So with that being said, I'd love to get your perspective on, how do you take on the Goliath when you're the David in the marketplace? And one of the things that we mentioned as you and I were talking a little bit offline was that you should only go big where it counts. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, coming into as a startup into a market that is already dominated by huge players. So the people that we compete against are, anywhere from $3 billion to $30 billion dollars in revenue a year, and they have huge marketing teams and huge marketing budgets. And so you just have to realize that there's no way you can compete across the board, across every channel, across every event. And so we looked at it and especially when economic times are good, there are hundreds of events that you could go to all around the world, right? And so we really, we tried to focus in on, okay, can we find that one event that we are sure we are going to hit the biggest number of prospects at, and then let's just go big at that one. And that's the approach we took. So, people, they don't necessarily see us everywhere they go, but when the majority of our prospects see us, we have a presence that looks much larger than we actually are as a company. And we would, in the early days, we'd have people come up to, our booth or our stand at the show and just be like, oh, MATRIXX, I thought you guys were this tiny little company. Well, actually we are, but we wanted to make a splash consistently at the same place every year. And it's really driven, that approach has driven a lot of success at that one show every year. I think every year we increase our meeting rate by 20%. We're doing 80 to 100 meetings over 3 days. So it's really worked well for us, just making sure you make those big bets where it counts.
So it kind of reminds me of, when you get cookied and you see those retargeting ads all over the internet, you're like, man, this company is everywhere. You guys were kind of doing the same thing offline, right?
Exactly. In an offline way. Yeah. And in a way that is high touch, right? Because those are face-to-face meetings and people remember you. They don't just remember, the name of the company. They remember the experience that they had with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I love how you owned it as well. I thought you were this tiny company. Well, we are, but we can definitely serve you, and going to your value prop right there face to face and making that connection memorable. I love that. So the next thing that you mentioned was, it all comes down to focus. So you've touched on this idea of focus when you're taking on these competitors that are much, much larger than you in relation to the events that you approach. For other folks in this sort of situation, what do you think, are areas where they need to make sure that they're focusing so that they, get the most out of the investments in their marketing and sales dollars that they can?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to go against the grain a little bit because as marketers, we all want to feel like we have addressed every single buying persona in our realm. But again, if you're small and you need to really get ROI from where you're putting every single dollar, you have to prioritize and pick the most important persona. So we really focused in some of the earlier content production we did, we really did focus it around who our absolute highest priority buying persona was, and then put a lot of effort into high quality content for that audience. And that really helped our sales teams go out and have material that they could talk to that was very high quality, very thought-provoking, but again, looked like it came from, the production value was looking like it came from a big software company, or even a big consumer company. It was that level of quality. And so that's what I mean. Focus. When you don't have all the resources at your fingertips, you really can make an impact where it matters.
Today's growth story is about an enterprise all-flash storage hardware vendor serving 20% of Fortune 100 companies. But here's the issue. They were struggling to engage with prospects across different territories. With a goal of growing their customer base, this hardware vendor decided to work with a partner on high-impact direct mail delivered to over 800 profiled leads across the UK, France, South Africa, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. This resulted in a 54.4% increase in total contract value. Wow. So who is the partner that delivered these results with direct mail? MRP Prolytics. MRP Prolytics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolytics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. So could MRP Prolytics work for you too? There's a real good chance it could. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
Right. Yeah. So kind of looking at, okay, these are the budgeting dollars. This is where the line is. So I need to be realistic about this is where the line is and this is what's going to fall below the line. And I need to be okay with that, because going deeper on these high impact buying personas that could mean more lifetime value to the company are better than going, an inch deep and a mile wide, right?
Exactly. And we did a very specific campaign that involved a series of high quality videos and then a very sort of high end actual printed piece, believe it or not, a book. And we tied that to one of the big events that we do and ran kind of a 3-month campaign around it, very targeted at a one persona. And the results were actually quite amazing.
Awesome. Well, the next thing I know you wanted to touch on was this idea that, creativity stands out. So you're talking about, the production value of the pieces that you create for the highest value buyer personas within your addressable market. But I love this idea, it doesn't cost more to be creative. So tell us a little bit about, maybe some examples of where you guys have used your creativity as a wedge to get, more reach out of your marketing efforts when you don't have, a ton of dollars to put into the marketing budget at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came down to picking a different approach to what you're going to show visually. So in the B2B software world, you get a lot of screenshots and, sort of similar product diagrams, and a lot of it, can tend to look the same. And so what we did was focus on the end customer experience. So we had part of what our customers deploy, there's a front end mobile application side to it. And so we invested in making that front end customer experience look amazing, and then led with that customer experience versus with, kind of the user experience, which is very different than what a lot of software companies do. And so it was an investment in, it's still an investment, but again, it was an investment in the design and the screens and the user experience, and then focusing on telling the journey from that perspective versus telling the story from the IT user perspective. And it just stood out compared to what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The next thing you were talking about, Jennifer, is, telling deeper customer stories and making sure that you're touching on, the high impact measurements within those.
This is an area where I think, marketing really has to stand their ground and work with the sales teams and executive management to make sure you build in referenceability into contracts. Right. It's something you can negotiate around. It's something that, you can put a value on. And so it's important to be bringing that into the sales process early so that when your customer does deploy successfully, you've already kind of set expectations around the kind of stories you're going to want to tell about their use of your product or solution. And so by getting the agreement early with the customers, you then have more access to get to real numbers around. One of the things that we look at is net promoter score. So how did our customers, how did their end customer satisfaction increase once they implemented our product? We talk about that throughout the sales process. And so they know that once they're live, that's the data that we're going to want them to share with us so that we can share that and tell that story around exactly what did they do that helped increase their customers' net promoter score. So it's building it in early and setting the expectations around the kind of KPIs you want to track, and then working with them on the back end.
Yeah. I think that's such good advice, because obviously, as you mentioned, in marketing, it's our job to tell the stories. But those are so much more impactful when we can get to the details. And I know from, 10 years of being in B2B sales, marketing sometimes can tell high level stories of, this percentage or that, and kind of some vague generalities. But I know, from a sales perspective, when I have very specific stories that tell very specific social proof to new prospects that come from another story of someone in the same role in the same market, that's much, much more powerful. And it's much easier to get those when you set the stage early with those clients, that there's an expectation that you're going to be asking those questions and getting buy-in, as opposed to after the sale kind of trying to pry those out of them, right?
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Well, the last thing I know you wanted to touch on, sounds like you had some experience here, is, when you're the David in the market and you're starting to see some success against the Goliaths, one thing you need to be ready for, because your competitors that are larger are going to have more resources, they may start copying what you're doing. What do you do then? Tell us a little bit about your experiences in that regard.
Well, you definitely have to plot a course. You can't kind of come up with a campaign or a position in a vacuum. You have to have plotted your course of what are your next 3 moves? What are your next 4 moves? So, early on, we came to market pitching that there's what had traditionally been 2 separate products in every single telco IT architecture in the world. We came to market and basically said, that's the wrong approach. That should be a single unified product. So, we kind of came out with a different perspective, spent a year pushing that into the market and explaining why, and then immediately had competitors follow suit and, basically agree with that proposition. But we knew where we wanted to go next, right? So we knew that our next move was to say, okay, the next iteration of our product is going to be no longer, advanced billing. It's going to be digital commerce. And here's how commerce is different than billing. So we had mapped a course out on what the vision was and how we were going to start laying that out to the market, so that, you got to stay at least 2 moves ahead, right? Right.
Yep. Thinking about it more like a chess match.
Think about it like or a long drip, right? Think about it, everything you need to think about as if it's a drip campaign.
Yeah. Or a long road trip with the kids, me personally, I know you've got to think about, okay, not just what's the first 30 minutes look like, but where is the next spot that we can stop on the road trip, and making sure that when you hit that spot of when you need to stop, there's a spot there. I think there's an analogy to be had that any of the parents listening to this can take from that. So I digress a little bit though. Awesome. Well, Jennifer, I really appreciated this conversation. I think you've got some really great takeaways for our audience to be thinking about when they're trying to compete with competitors much larger and with deeper pockets than they have. If anybody listening to this would like to ask you some follow-up questions, follow you online, or just stay connected in some way, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, they can connect with me either on Twitter. I'm at Jennifer Kyriakakis. That's my Twitter handle. Or I'm also on LinkedIn, and my last name is Kyriakakis.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Make it easy for folks as well.
Thanks, Logan. It's been great talking to you.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show, Jennifer. Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.